Hello, I'm Safa Gopeng.
And I'm Gita Jaykumar.
And our lesson for the health education event was about the perception of stress. Months ago, we were discussing possible topics for this event while studying for our test for the AP Psychology class.
We were learning about stress at the time and found the topic very interesting and captivating. A lot of the information we were learning sounded like very valuable things that everyone, specifically people in high school, should know.
So we realized this would be a perfect topic for us to use for our HOSA event. In our high school years, new relationships, whether romantic or friendly, and more serious challenges prove to evoke stress quite frequently. Deadlines become relentless and intense at the end of each semester. Volunteering, sports, academic clubs, and more all cause us to become so stressed that we can often feel ourselves becoming ill.
We learned that from a young age, adolescents and adults deal with stress on a daily basis. Constant stress can eventually lead to more serious form of stress called chronic stress. This constant stress could potentially result in premature death. However, it was found that stress is not the defining factor of our health. Rather, it is how we perceive it.
In this lesson, students were educated on the negative effects of stress and how we can combat those effects simply by changing our views on stress. The main idea that we wanted the students to walk away with was that your perception on how stress affects you can actually change the effect that it has on your health and body.
Typically, when many of us think of stress, we perceive it to be negative. What many people fail to regard is that there is also positive stress, eustress. Eustress is stress that occurs in response to an exciting but stressful event, and typically the outcome ends up being fairly positive.
The body's reaction to stress can also quite be helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's getting more oxygen to your brain. People who learn to view the stress response as helpful for their performance are less stressed, less anxious, more confident, and their overall physical health improve drastically.
We designed an engaging lesson plan to teach a freshman and sophomore biology class all about the specific biology behind stress, including parts of the brain, hormones, neurotransmitters, and other psychology concepts, such as the feel-good, do-good phenomenon. We also described responses such as fight or flight, as well as more long-term consequences, such as AIDS or heart disease.
Prior to the presentation, our audience was given a pre-test to test their pre-existing knowledge on perception and biology of stress.
We worded our questions in a specific way to minimize wording bias, to make sure that we did not accidentally influence their responses.
The style of our PowerPoint was made to be fun, pretty, and aesthetically pleasing. In high school classes, teachers tend to use PowerPoints often, but they are typically bland. We found the best way to engage the audience was the use of colorful animations and graphics throughout.
While many assumed that colorful and fun nature of the slide would cater towards a younger audience, we find that high schoolers often enjoy these cute lessons. Simply getting the students to like the appearance of our presentation already aids us in getting their full attention.
We also use very little words in the slides, instead choosing to use relevant pictures and GIFs, and then describing how they relate and represent the topic. This makes it significantly easier for the students to understand the lesson and connect the science to normal life.
We wrote a very detailed script, making sure we covered each of the topics in depth and accurately explained the purpose of each image. The information and teaching was evenly split between the two of us. The individual speaking parts are highlighted in the script included in the portfolio.
After teaching about the two types of stress, we paused the lesson and conducted an interactive activity. We created 16 different cards with real-life scenarios, which also depicted graphically through Bitmoji images, which are versions of us in different situations. We thought that using the cartoon versions of us would make it more personal and add a fun touch to the activity.
Some of the scenarios included were being late due to traffic, getting fired from a job, getting asked to prom, and more. The students were asked to sort the 16 cards into two categories, eustress and distress, on the corresponding handout.
We went around the classroom answering questions and helping them organize the cards. We then went through the answers as a class. Students raised their hands and shared their answers. And also, as many of the cards could have been argued to be in one category or the other, we engaged in an educational debate, helping the students understand the concepts in much more depth.
After the presentation was over, we rewarded the audience with a game of Kahoot. Kahoot is an online quiz game that, in our personal experience, high schoolers always find as a lot of fun and as a friendly competition. It is an excellent way for them to review all of the content. During this time, we provided them with review handout sheets that contained all the important points.
After the Kahoot was over, we asked the students to take our post-test, which was the exact same questions as a pre-test except for the last question. During our presentation, we made sure to cover each of the topics very extensively. The post-test allowed us to see how much of the students learned and retained from our lesson. We collected the review handouts before the post-test, but then we allowed them to keep the handouts afterwards.
In order to compare the results, we created graphs of the responses from the pre- and post-test and then compared the differences. All of the graphs indicate an increase in correct answers. This is a good indicator that students have learned new things about their idea of stress. This is most prominently seen in the first graph, asking about the types of stress, as the correct answer rose from 0 to 100%. In graph 4, discussing diseases, the percentage of people that had chosen AIDS rose drastically from 0 to nearly 90%.
Overall, we can see that stress is beneficial for us in numerous ways. Our perception of stress defines us as people. It allows us to become more social people, causing our perception of stress to become more positive. As our perception changes, we see that we become more mentally healthy people as well. If we feel better about ourselves, we are more likely to do good for others.
Through the outstanding results in the Kahoot and post test, we found that students learned a lot of new useful information about this topic that is likely to come in handy during their high school years and their lifetimes, especially today during this stressful time. Students can look back at this lesson and remember that the stress they may be feeling right now can be beneficial if only they look at it with the right point of view.